This is the second installment in a series that explores in detail the positioning, movements, and engagements of all units on the entire battlefield on Day 1 at Gettysburg. This installment focuses on the initial fighting in McPherson Woods, also known as Herbst Woods, and the railroad cuts. By about 10 a.m. on the morning of July 1st, the rebel brigades of Archer and Davis were in the midst of their forced reconnaissance, ordered by Division Commander General Henry Heth. He only sends 2 brigades, leaving Pettigrew and Brockenbrough in reserve, thinking they were opposed only by the dismounted cavalry of Gamble's and Devin's brigades of Buford's Union Cavalry Division. The Confederates boldly advanced east, but soon discover they were facing fresh Union infantry. General Reynolds has ordered Cutler's 1st Corps Brigade to positions opposite the advancing Confederate infantry, both north and south of the Chambersburg Pike. But for the moment, he must rely on only Gamble's cavalry to defend against an advance in McPherson Woods. This video has been extracted from a comprehensive work that encompasses every inch of the Gettysburg battlefield, a highly detailed animation covering over 60 hours of conflict that took place on July 1st through 3rd, 1863. For more information about this acclaimed work and how you can use it to explore the entire battlefield and battle, visit our website, gettysburganimated.com. South of the Chambersburg Pike, Archer's brigade has moved down the eastern slope of Hare Ridge, and now under artillery fire from Purgle's section of Califf's battery, he is halted. Author Scott Hartwig, in his essay for the Papers of the 10th Gettysburg National Military Park Seminar Series, writes, quote, "Archer halted his brigade, not because Purgle's guns were damaging his brigade, but because resistance was clearly increasing and he was moving away from his supports." Unquote. After being ordered by Heth to continue forward, Hartwig continues, quote, "Archer suggested to Heth that his brigade was too small to risk so far in advance of support. Heth listened but did not agree, and Archer had no choice but to push on." Unquote. Following orders, the Tennessee and Alabama regiments push across Willoughby Run and start up the slope of McPherson Ridge, shielded from Purgle's guns and getting a respite from the artillery fire. They slowly push back the 8th New York and 8th Illinois Cavalry skirmishers. Califf, electing not to wait until the rebels are within canister range, orders Purgle's section to withdraw back toward the seminary. A squadron from the 8th New York charges back down the treeless slope, firing at the advancing 13th Alabama, and buying time for Purgle's guns to pull out. This is a photo taken along Reynolds Avenue, looking north-northwest toward McPherson Woods. Meredith Avenue branches off to the left and runs between the woods and the grain field, which is hiding any view of the park roadway. It runs downslope toward Willoughby Run. It was through this field that the 8th New York withdrew in the face of the advancing rebels. Purgle's 2-gun section was deployed just out of frame to the right, as shown in this next photo taken at the same spot by swinging the camera orientation to the east. Here Purgle's monument and approximate gun position can be seen. To the right of the cannons was the position from which the squadron of 8th New York Cavalry charged back down the slope to thwart the advance of the 13th Alabama coming toward the guns. This third photo was taken along Meredith Avenue from the perspective of the 13th Alabama, looking up the slope toward the crest. The 13th Alabama would have advanced in the grain field to the right and were fired upon by the charging 8th New York companies, buying time for Purgle to withdraw.
As the situation in McPherson Woods grew desperate for Gamble's dismounted troopers, Meredith's brigade arrived on the western slopes of Seminary Ridge. Colonel Fairchild, commanding the 2nd Wisconsin, at the head of Meredith's column, could see the men of the 8th New York lying down in a skirmish line just to the southeast of the woods, about 400 yards directly to his front. Receiving orders from Wadsworth, his regiment immediately formed, then double-quicked, loading on the run, and headed toward the woods, where General Reynolds was anxiously waiting for them. Of Reynolds, author Hartwig writes, quote, "He could see the 7th and 14th Tennessee approaching, and was anxious to blunt their advance before they gained possession of the woods and turned Cutler's left flank. As the 2nd Wisconsin came rushing up the slope, Reynolds rode over to them and called out, 'Forward, men, for God's sake, and drive those fellows out of the woods.'" Unquote. As the Black Hats charged by him and engaged the Tennesseans, Reynolds, on horseback, while looking back toward the seminary for the rest of Meredith's brigade, was shot in the head and instantly killed. As Reynolds' body was carried to the rear, the remaining regiments of the Iron Brigade, who took longer to form and then load, came rushing up to the crest of the ridge. The 7th Wisconsin was first to arrive, and from their position on the crest could see the 13th Alabama wheeling left and pouring flanking fire into the 2nd Wisconsin. Colonel Robinson, commanding the 7th Wisconsin, saw the opportunity to advance and flank the 13th Alabama, but prudently waited a few more minutes for the trailing 19th Indiana and 24th Michigan to go into position on his left. Together, all 3 regiments moved down the slope toward Willoughby Run, routing the now outnumbered men of Archer's brigade. Meanwhile, the 2nd Wisconsin continued to push the Confederates from their initial assault position within the woods.
This photo is taken along Reynolds Avenue, looking south-southeast toward the crest of Seminary Ridge, where it intersects the Fairfield Road, hidden by the present-day woods, not there in 1863. Reynolds Avenue is running along the crest of McPherson Ridge. The grain field occupies the swale, with Seminary Ridge on the left. When Meredith's brigade arrived, the 2nd Wisconsin in the lead, the column would have approached directly at the camera position, halting in the swale. This next photo shows the eastern end of McPherson Woods, also known as Herbst Woods. It is here that General Reynolds anxiously waited for Meredith's arrival, and where he shouted encouragement to the approaching 2nd Wisconsin, being killed just a few minutes later at the site of the memorial marker. The third photo shows the intersection of Meredith and Reynolds Avenues, about the location where the 7th Wisconsin formed a line of battle, but waited for the 19th Indiana and 24th Michigan to arrive on their left, before charging down the slope to attack the 13th Alabama, and then go on to rout the rest of Archer's brigade.
The 4 regiments of the Iron Brigade chased Archer's brigade back across Willoughby Run and up the slopes back toward Hare Ridge. Brockenbrough's brigade came up from their reserve position to help cover the retreat, but they did not advance beyond the southern boundary of the woods, later known as the Springs Hotel Woods. Nearly 1/3 of the 1,200 men Archer had taken into action that morning were killed, wounded, or captured, including Archer. Command of his brigade would fall to General Fry. Meredith soon withdrew his brigade back across Willoughby Run and prepared to change front to the north, a change no longer necessary because by this time Davis's rebel brigade, north of the Chambersburg Pike, had also been repulsed, as will be shown in the coming segments.
This photo shows the loop where Stone Avenue becomes Meredith Avenue in the western half of McPherson Woods. Willoughby Run is downslope, running through the woods to the right. Archer's brigade advanced up that slope, across the present-day road, pushing back Gamble's dismounted cavalry before being counterattacked by the Iron Brigade, charging through the woods to the left. Meredith's units routed the rebels, pushing them back down slope, across the creek, and up the opposite slope. The monument to the 2nd Wisconsin can be seen clearly. Monuments to the 24th Michigan, 19th Indiana, and 26th North Carolina are just out of view around the bend.
While the 90 minutes of fighting in McPherson Woods was underway, equally heavy engagements were taking place north of the Chambersburg Pike. But before a detailed examination of that fighting, we need to understand the nature of how Devin deployed north of the Pike, to the right of Gamble. About the time of the first shot, discussed in the first installment of this video series, a significant part of Devin's brigade was detached from its westerly-facing main line on Forney Ridge. Part of the 9th New York was scouting astride the Harrisburg Road and the Hunterstown Road, keeping an eye out for Ewell's brigade, reported to be en route to Gettysburg from York. In the History of the 9th Regiment, New York Volunteer Cavalry, author Newell Cheney writes, quote, "About 7 a.m., Companies C and M went out the Harrisburg Road to high ground beyond Rock Creek and relieved Companies A and H. 12 men of Company M were sent to picket the Hunterstown Road a half a mile to the east." Unquote. The rest of the regiment, excepting 4 companies being detached, 2 each to the 3rd and 12th Corps, was watering their horses along the banks of Rock Creek. Of Devin's 17th Pennsylvania, 6th New York, 3rd Indiana, and 12th Illinois, squadrons of pickets and vedettes detached from the main line were deployed in an arc. It ran from the Mummasburg Road to the northwest of town, over to the Carlisle Pike to the north, and then on to the Harrisburg Road to the northeast. But as the infantry threat from the west began to manifest itself, Buford instructed Devin to strengthen his main line. He moved squadrons of the 3rd Indiana and 6th New York further west toward Hare Ridge. He also ordered 6 companies of the 9th New York to take up a position on Forney Ridge between the 6th New York and 17th Pennsylvania, reinforcing that western line. Cheney continues, quote, "About 8 a.m., the 9th New York was then watering its horses by squadrons in Rock Creek. As soon as each squadron returned, it was ordered out on the Mummasburg Road to support the pickets. Companies F and K, having watered their horses first, were the first to saddle up and reach the picket line." Unquote. Within a few minutes, 4 additional companies of the 9th New York made their way west from Rock Creek, joining the rest of the regiment. By about 9 a.m., the only remaining units north and northeast of Gettysburg, keeping an eye out for approaching Confederates from those directions, were 3 companies of the 17th Pennsylvania and the remaining 2 companies of the 9th New York. The rest of Devin's brigade was oriented toward the west and Davis's deploying brigade. Minutes after the 55th North Carolina deployed on Davis's brigade left, Devin's units quickly began sending their horses to the rear, to Herbst Woods and the back slope of Oak Ridge, and then braced for the coming assault. The 55th North Carolina, commanded by Major Bellow, sent out a line of skirmishers. They faced a weak skirmish line of the 6th New York, but that line stretched beyond the flank of the North Carolinians. About that same time, a detachment of 20 men from the 9th New York rode out the Mummasburg Road, about 400 yards beyond Forney Ridge, to the vicinity of the Hoffman farm buildings. There they found the 55th North Carolina men in force south of the road in Forney's Woods. Major Bello deployed a company to counter the threat of Union cavalry in the woods, pushing them out of the woods and then driving them back to the main defensive line. Meanwhile, the main body of the 55th began to heavily engage the north end of Devin's last stand line on Forney Ridge.
This photo is taken along the Mummasburg Road, looking east, near the location of the Nicholas Hoffman farm. Forney Ridge can be seen in the distance. The northern boundary of Forney Woods runs along the south side of the road. It was in these woods that the detachment of the 9th New York discovered and engaged elements of the 55th North Carolina before being pushed back to the road and then back toward the ridge where Devin's main line was positioned.
While the 55th North Carolina was driving back Devin's right, Davis's two right regiments, the 2nd and 42nd Mississippi, were having similar success against Devin's left. Here the Federal dismounted advance lines of the 12th Illinois and 3rd Indiana stubbornly gave way, falling back to their respective main lines along West McPherson Ridge. But while the Confederate infantry was having success, Brander's exposed battery was taking a beating from Califf's guns, forcing the rebel battery to limber and withdraw to the relative safety on Herbst Ridge at the far left end of Pegram's battalion. While Brander was withdrawing, Hall's Union battery was arriving, relieving Califf's two sections, which had been firing from opposite sides of the Chambersburg Pike. Buford ordered Califf to return to the seminary, refill their limber chests with ammunition from the caissons there, and await orders.
This photo is taken on Buford Avenue, midway between the Chambersburg Pike and the Mummasburg Road, directly opposite the monument to the 6th New York Cavalry. This portion of the avenue runs along the crest of Forney Ridge, and this view is looking to the south-southwest. The far fence line runs along a farm lane, leading to the wartime farm of James Willis, just out of the picture to the right. The 2nd Mississippi advanced from that farm, west to east, astride this fence line as they engaged and pushed back the 3rd Indiana and 3rd West Virginia dismounted cavalry towards Herbst Woods, shown in this photo. Taken from this same location, but now facing south-southeast, the center railroad cut can be seen in the far distance, marking East McPherson Ridge, and the northern end of present-day Reynolds Avenue, visible running along that ridge. The far fence line runs along the east to west portion of Buford Avenue, across the swale between McPherson and Forney Ridges, before it turns 90 degrees to the north into this photo location. Herbst Woods, into which Devin's troopers withdrew, can be seen on the far left of the photo.
At the northern end of the opposing battle lines, the retiring 6th and 9th New York and 17th Pennsylvania cavalry troopers halted and fired one more volley at the advancing rebels. The sudden volley momentarily stymied the advance of the 55th North Carolina and drove them scurrying back toward the Forney farm buildings and the protection of the backside of Forney Ridge. As the 55th North Carolina licked its wounds and prepared to resume the attack, Devin's dismounted troopers used the opportunity to take refuge in Herbst Woods and behind a stone wall running along the crest of Oak Ridge.
This photo is taken on Buford Avenue from the same spot as the previous two, this time looking north-northwest. Oak Hill and the Mummasburg Road can be seen in the distance on the right. After pushing Devin's dismounted troopers from Forney Ridge, the 55th North Carolina advanced left to right to the same ridge crest before being surprised by one last volley from the retiring 6th and 9th New York and 17th Pennsylvania troopers. The 55th North Carolina momentarily withdrew in confusion from the crest back toward Forney Woods. This photo, taken along Doubleday Avenue looking south, shows the approximate location of the stone wall along Oak Ridge, behind which Devin's northern regiments took shelter while the 55th North Carolina reorganized. Herbst Woods can be seen in the distance and was where Devin's southern regiments took cover as Davis's brigade attack unfolded, now against Union infantry.
Devin's reinforced line succeeded in holding back Davis's 3 regiments long enough to allow Union 1st Corps infantry to arrive. The northern wing of Cutler's brigade formed a line of battle just west of Herbst Woods and surprised Davis's rebels, who thus far had been slowly pushing back only dismounted Union cavalry, as has been shown. The heavy morning fighting north of the Chambersburg Pike, with a focus on the west and center railroad cuts, will be covered in Part 2 of this second video installment of our series on Gettysburg, Day 1.